Hello there folks, welcome back to another speed paint. This week I'll be designing some Pokemon in some ice-themed forms. This is partially inspired by Zesty Does Things, who has been running a Pokésember challenge, where every couple of prompts there is an ice form prompt where artists have been making ice forms of Pokemon that don't have them yet. So I thought this would be a lot of fun to apply this to some Pokemon that I thought would look cool with nice, icy, wintry forms. So without further ado, let's go into the speed paint. Our first design is the Sentret line. I really like Sentret and Furret, and I think the two of them really lend themselves to a lot of very easy designs, which I think can really make a good warm-up for making ice-themed Pokemon designs, especially because they are already Mustelid in design. They already lend themselves to a lot of ideas for more wintry type creatures. I was particularly inspired by Ermines, which are, they're really cute. Whenever I think of them, I do think of the Golden Compass series or his Dark Materials if you read the books. And I think a lot about how Pentalimen is often depicted as an Ermine. So I don't know, it gives it a little bit of an extra wintry association for me specifically. I don't know if anyone else relates to that, but yeah. There's a lot of, wintertime, cold climate Mustelids out there with their cute snowy white coats, and I thought that it would be fun to adapt that aesthetic and vibe. And for Sentret, I didn't change too much about its design. I gave it slightly fluffier ears, almost inspired by the Baniri line a little bit. I didn't want to go and copy their concept straight up, but I did want to pull some inspirations, since they seem to be rodent-type Pokemon that are adapted for a colder climate. Sinnoh is based on Hokkaido after all. So I thought it would be a nice idea to pull in those fluffy forms. I made the tail really fluffy to really exaggerate that. And I also made the pattern on its belly have 6 points on it, similar to a snowflake. I thought that would make it cute, make it a little different from the base form. Kind of inspired by how Paldean Wooper has a different pattern on its belly than Johtonian Wooper. So I thought that kind of trend of changing the subtle patterning on a Pokemon's body when you make regional forms, I thought it would be smart to continue that idea. It makes them look a little more natural and a little more in line with the Pokemon design philosophy. For Furret, I kept it very similar. I basically just rounded out the shapes, keeping in the same vein as the way I drew Sentret, and also giving it more of a fluffy feel instead of the very sleek and graphic designy feel Johtonian Furret has. Overall, one of the most difficult things for this was the colors. Even though I went in here with a pretty strong idea of making white Mustelids, it was still kind of a challenge to decide how to do the colors. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do Sentret in white with dark accents, or if I wanted to have its value scheme be pretty similar to the official Johtonian Sentret. And I tried a couple ideas, but ultimately I ended up going with this sort of light blue look with the white accent on the belly and then dark blue accents on the ears and the tail, kind of similar to the value mapping you would see on actual Johtonian Sentret. I also made the tips of its ears white to more resemble snow and to give them a little bit more visual interest, give them a little contrast, and again call back to the inspiration from the Baniri line I was trying to take. I then tried to use those very same colors in Furret's design, and I originally had planned to make its entire body white, kind of similar to how in its base design almost its entire body is that light tan color. But I found that it kind of got a little, it wasn't as easy to read in the distinction between the very furry chest/chin I was trying to give it and the rest of its body. That furry chest/chin is partially inspired by scarves and other things that you sometimes see made out of mink fur, another Mustelid with, a white coat and associated with wintertime weather. And I wanted to make it look like it's all cozied up and bundled in for the winter. It also makes the silhouette a little bit different from standard Johtonian Furret, who again is pretty slick and clean in its design. I feel like adding a little bit of that fluff and a little bit of that noise can make it look like it's got thicker fur and more ready for that nice cold weather. Another thing that often happens with Pokemon designs, which I've talked about before, is a lot of Pokemon have these large black eyes that basically have eye highlights that act as pupils. Pikachu is a really prime example of this, and of course Furret is also an example. Rewatching through my speed paint, having that Furret just have no eye highlights with just those eyes staring back into the void. This thing, it kind of skeezes me out, but that's just something you have to trust with the process. As soon as I put the eye highlights on, it looks perfectly fine and normal, but It's really weird when you're drawing a Pokemon and you're not quite done with the eyes yet because you aren't doing the highlights quite yet, and you just have to sit and look at them be unfinished for a little bit. For the shadows, I was a little unsure of what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure if I wanted to round them out with purple as my warm color or with green as my warm color. So I did do a version of shadows with both just to see, and after switching back and forth and looking at them for a little bit, I decided that for these designs, I would instead go with the green, which keeps it a more cooler color. That, and I use a lot of like minty and teal colors in the designs anyway, and I just felt it looked a little more cohesive. And it also gives these designs a very distinct, different look than the rest of my art, since most of my art has those more purpley or pinky edge to the shadows anyway. So ultimately I ended up with a very unique feel in the rendering and color of these designs, like it's so distinctly winter-like, and they were just a lot of fun to work with. These two are very simple, but were deceptively challenging, and I did have to do a little bit of like visual problem solving to get these designs to where I wanted them. But overall, I'm honestly really happy. I think they came out really cute and appropriately fit for winter. The next ice form designs we have are for Hoot Hoot and Noctowl. I didn't intend to do 2 early root Johto Pokemon when I was starting this challenge, but I don't know, I was just looking through the Pokedex and these are the 2 Pokemon I had ideas for first, so that's who I ended up doing. Spoiler alert, the 3rd Pokemon I will be drawing is not at all in line with early root Johto. It is a completely different Pokemon, so if you saw the thumbnail you already know, but yeah, it's gonna be pretty different. Anyway, here is the Hoot Hoot line. I don't know why. Hoot Hoot's eyes were giving me a bit of trouble when I was first sketching them out, but I eventually was able to figure them out. There's just a lot of stuff you have to worry about with tangents with the edges of the rims around its eyes, and then relating to the edge of its actual head. And the toe count on Hoot Hoot is kind of weird. Like, I'm pretty sure one of the claws that you see from the front is its rear claw. Like, I'm pretty sure it has 3 in the front and 1 in the back, just like Noctowl. But it's a little hard to tell with Hoot Hoot's official art, so I just had to kind of trust the process. For the rims around the eyes, I decided to do a special approach for them. Instead of just making them like a black feather pattern, kind of like the official design, I decided I would make these things made out of ice, both on Noctowl and Hoot Hoot. So later on, this is going to be giving me a little bit of a color challenge, but that's what I was going for, was this sort of sculpted ice feel. Hoot Hoot was pretty easy to put together, all things considered, and Noctowl, you know what? I think I had an easier time with Noctowl than I did with Hoot Hoot. I don't know why that is. I think it is, again, that tangent thing I was kind of running into with Hoot Hoot's head. But, you know, Noctowl, I've drawn Noctowl before. I think it's a very lovely Pokemon, fairly simple in its design. And for Noctowl's design, I actually decided to give it a beard. And this is inspired by an elderly Noctowl that we've seen in the anime who has a beard. And I thought a beard gives it more of that wintry flavor in its design. It makes its silhouette slightly different from standard Noctowl. And of course, I made the crest on its head out of ice, just like I did with Hoot Hoot. I really think the beard adds a lot. I think it looks so natural and it almost makes you forget it's not on standard Johtonian Noctowl to begin with. And honestly, I'm just pretty happy with it. I think for a lot of the shapes for this design, for both of these, I did very minor changes, but I think the changes that were there feel like they make sense, like in the Pokemon design philosophy, and feel appropriately icy and wintry. And I think it really helps that these Pokemon are fairly simple to begin with, so you don't have to do a lot to change them. They are honestly, I mean, you don't have to fix what's perfect, you know? They're really very nice. For the color palette, just like with Sentret and Furret, I had the idea of going with a white design, but still, when it came to the value mapping, it was a little bit of a challenge. I definitely found a lot of challenge with Hoot Hoot's main body color. You'll see me change it a lot during this. For Noctowl, it was pretty easy to go with a very white body since it already has the lightest color on its design on its body. I mean, not counting the crest, but the crest is going to be made of ice, so it's going to be treated a little differently anyway. But I really wanted to go with this sort of like snowy owl design for Noctowl. After all, the like patterning on its chest, those triangles, already reminds me a lot of the flecks you see on a snowy owl, so it felt only appropriate to go with a nice white owl for Noctowl. And Noctowl is pretty easy to put together. Oh boy, though, Hoot Hoot was a real value mess. I kept finding myself stuck with these mid-tones, and I didn't want to make it too dark because it felt like it became more like ocean and less like ice, so I really wanted to keep it pastel while still making it very readable, and it was a challenge. You'll see me go through quite a few color iterations trying to color the body of Hoot Hoot, and it was just a challenge. I also had to go through and color my line art. I did that with the Furret and Centret line too, but they were pretty simple. They didn't give me a lot of challenges with coloring the lines, but for these two, they have a lot of colors that intersect with each other that are very similar in value, so it was a little bit of a challenge, but I was able to figure it out. It was definitely a lot of work trying to decide how to make these colors work without making them muddy or too similar in value, while also still keeping them very light and bright and keeping it icy without accidentally dipping into like ocean, like summer colors, if that makes sense. So I really had to toe the line there, but I'm still pretty happy with how it came out, even though it was really tricky. I am pretty happy with this. Like, these designs are really cute. I'm very happy with how I shaded these guys too. I think, I don't know, something about the way the shadows came out on this is very like dramatic. It feels like a nice wintry morning where the sun's like extremely bright and reflecting off of the snow and causing all this glare. I don't know. It just feels right. And I feel like the ice crests came out pretty good. I really did have a vision for them, and I'm pretty happy with how I was able to figure them out. And yeah, this design, even though they gave me a little bit of trouble, especially with the coloring, I'm pretty happy with them. I think they look appropriately icy and very cute. Last up, we have an ice form of Rayquaza. And Rayquaza is actually the whole reason I decided to do this challenge. I mean, I was interested in doing ice-type forms anyway, since it is a wintry time of year, but man, I just had a vision in my mind for what ice Rayquaza would look like, and I just wanted to bring that to life, and so I found an excuse to draw some other Pokemon as well, so this would be long enough to be worth being a speed paint video. And it's kind of funny because, honestly, I feel like this one turned out very simple. And while I don't hate it, I think it came out pretty good. I think it is kind of the weakest design of the bunch, which is pretty funny considering this idea was the whole reason I went with this challenge in the first place. I think maybe I'll revisit it at some point. I didn't really change too much about Rayquaza design. Most of the changes came in the color palette, which, I mean, the same is true of my Centret line and my Hoot Hoot line designs, but I didn't really change a lot. I just kind of changed the horn shape to resemble a little bit more like ice crystals, and as far as silhouette goes, that's really about it. I probably could have done more with the tail and more with the, like, sails on its body. I don't know, are those sails, ridges, scales? I don't know. If you have an idea of what those are called, please let me know, because now that I'm thinking about it, I can't get it out of my mind that I'm not sure what to call them. Rayquaza's face is always the biggest challenge whenever I have to draw it. I feel like it is so hard to find how to draw this thing at any angle other than the one that its official art is depicting it. Rayquaza's kind of got a face like a bird of prey, like, it's just not very flattering from any angle that isn't head-on, which I think is part of its charm. Like, it's got such a gummy mouth, like, its teeth are all red, like, it's just a very funny looking Pokemon. And I think we don't really appreciate that very much because it is so majestic at a side view. Well, head on, this guy looks kind of weird. I love that, actually. I think that's pretty fun. Anyway, I didn't end up changing very much. I probably could have done more with this design, and I might revisit it in the future, but I'm still pretty happy with it. Just like the other designs, I went with a primarily white body. That's very classically snowy and white. For most of the accent lines, I went with this sort of light tealish blue. I wanted the impression that they were like glowing or full of power or something, so I wanted there to be like this glowy aspect to it, sort of how bright that yellow line is on Rayquaza's body in the official design. And honestly, it was just a lot of fun trying to draw Rayquaza in these pastels. I made its gums blue, or gums/teeth, I guess. I don't know what to call that. I guess those are just its teeth. But I made them blue because not only did I think it fit with the color palette, but it also kind of reminded me of when people get cold, their lips usually turn blue. So I kind of wanted to reference that idea visually, and, you know, it just visually made a lot of sense with this design. Ultimately, even though this is honestly, like, such a simple design, I really didn't have to do a lot with it. It was still a pretty fun little process to do. It was just very relaxing to go through, draw all these lines, color all of them in. Like, I didn't really have to do a lot of thinking, and maybe the lack of thinking is why this is the weakest design of the bunch, in my opinion. But, you know, I don't hate it. Like I said, I still think it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty serviceable as an ice form. And I'd love to revisit it again in the future, because now that I've got this version done, it's like I have a first draft, you know? I can always come back here whenever I'm ready for it. I've had a lot of fun with this design. I also had a lot of fun with the background as well. I mean, for the background of all these pieces, I've put, like, scene elements in, like, as you saw with Centret and Hoot Hoot, you saw that there was, like, a rectangle with trees and stuff. And I didn't want to do a landscape for Rayquazas because, I mean, when is Rayquaza ever near the ground? There's even, like, this idea or mythos that Rayquaza never touches the ground, which I'm pretty sure we know isn't true. Like, I'm pretty sure we've seen it hit the ground in the anime before, specifically in the Deoxys movie. Like, that guy touches the ground a couple times in that movie because he gets knocked down. But, like, there's this idea that Rayquaza never comes down to touch the earth, and I think that's kind of cool. So instead of using, like, a landscape-inspired background element, I decided to go with just purely clouds, which, I mean, that's Rayquaza's domain, is, you know, high up in the sky in the clouds, so that just felt right. Plus, it's kind of fun to make an ice form for Rayquaza because that's another weather effect. So, like, obviously Groudon and Kyogre are, like, sunlight and rain, and Rayquaza's supposed to be, like, the neutral airlock, that sort of thing, as it neutralizes all those effects, but maybe this one is, like, snow warning or something, like, it calls in, like, heavy snow or hail or something like that. I don't know, I'm just kind of saying things, but, you know, I think it still fits into the weather theme that the whole legendary trio goes into. And again, even though this isn't my favorite design, I don't think, I still had a lot of fun working on it, and I'd love to revisit it again in the future. It's still pretty solid, and just like the others, I just love this, like, wintry, cool colored color palette. It's just a lot of fun, so I'm pretty happy with this design. And with that, that's all I've got for you guys today. Did you guys have a favorite ice form I drew today? I think my favorite... I really like Centret and I really like Noctowl today. I think those are the two I really like, but honestly, I'm pretty happy with all three sets. I think they all look fairly cohesive as, like, a matched set, but they all stand pretty well on their own, and they're all very clearly ice forms. Like, I feel like I hit the brief this time, you know? Let me know if any of you guys are interested in these character designs as adoptables, by the way. I might make them available in my Ko-fi shop if you guys expressed interest, so if you're interested, let me know in the comments below and I might put them up. I'd probably offer both a shaded and flat version of these character sheets, so you can use them as easy reference, but also have the nice polished version to show everyone. If you'd like to support me, by the way, Ko-fi is the best way to do so. You can go find my link to my Ko-fi shop below. I've got commissions open, I've got my shop open, I've got monthly memberships. There's a whole lot of stuff you can look at down there, and anything you guys can do to help me financially would be majorly appreciated. It helps me cover my expenses, like bills and whatnot, so seriously, it really helps a lot, and I appreciate your support. And by the way, I know we're getting really close to the end of the year. I really would like to try to hit 100 subs before the year ends. I know we're really cutting it close, and at the time of recording, it's still another 2 weeks out before the year ends, and I think we're at over 60 subs right now, so I'll put that in the edit. You'll see how many we're at when I'm, you know, working on this video. But hopefully we're closer by the time you guys are actually seeing this. I really would like to hit this milestone. I think it would be really cool to get my audience to that point, so if you enjoy these designs, if you enjoy hearing me yap about my lovely little guys, feel free to subscribe. You can unsubscribe at any time, but I always try to put out these speed paints every week, and I just have a lot of fun working on them. The next video will not be on a Friday. I plan to put it out on New Year's Day, and it will be my compilation of all the art I've done for Pokécember and talking about my Pokécember project. Right now, I'm a little more than halfway done with all my art pieces for it, and I gotta finish them so that way I can work on the speed paint in time and put out that video in time for New Year's Day so I can talk about, you know, my December month of art challenge. And after that, I'll have a normal speed paint that Friday, probably. Who knows what the topic will be? I have yet to decide. Anyway, I believe that's everything I got for you guys today, so thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all again soon with my next speed paint. And in the meantime, go out there and make some art.